Hello there, dear viewer. It's time for some summaries. In my 2 and a bit years of Skyrim character building, I always had a strong temptation to use certain items in Skyrim, very specific items. The items that fill a specific niche, facilitate a playstyle which is otherwise underpowered, or items that unlock powerful combinations. If I didn't care about making my builds different to one another, many of them would share a lot of the same gear. So let's take a look at the 10 burst items for character building in Skyrim. To be clear, these may not be the most powerful items, they may not be chaos enchanted SKYRIM swords, but they are facilitating rarer builds and more obscure character ideas. I will not talk about the Creation Club content because, well, I don't use it, and from what I've seen, some interesting items happen there sometimes. That may require a separate video, probably done by someone else. All of these are unique and have a unique effect. Some are hard to find or otherwise obtain, so a short description of how to get them is in order. So at the number 10 spot we have the Gloves of the Pugilist. They happen to be the only disenchantable item on the list, and this little detail makes them so useful. In the vanilla game without any skills and perks overhauls, they are the only reason why hand-to-hand combat can sometimes be somewhat a little bit useful maybe. With the Restoration Loop exploit or with Alchemy Enchanting Loop, you can pump up the unarmed damage they give to basically whatever number you aim for, and it can be placed onto items, gauntlets and a ring, which will stack with each other. This is probably widely known at this point, so let's not dwell on that item any longer. The gloves are the bread and butter of any brawler or monk builds, and they can be useful with a rather minimal perk investment. With Vokri, Ordinator, Dragon Soul Relinquishment and many other mods expanding on unarmed combat, your punches can easily surpass most weapons in terms of damage per second. The gloves can be found in Riften Ratway on a uniquely named enemy, Gian the Fist. Now for something less appreciated by the community, the Targe of the Blooded. It earns the number 9 in my eyes because it is quite literally the only item of its kind in the game. It has unique look, it has a unique enchantment but can be improved without the Arcane Blacksmith perk. It deals damage over time on shield bashes. The damage amounts to just about 15 in total, but it stacks with itself, so with, say, the axe bleeding damage unlockable with some weapon perks, you can get quite a lot of free damage. It doesn't cost any more stamina, it doesn't need souls or soul gems, just pure damage for things you would do anyway. The Targe is particularly useful to lightly armored warriors because you can still get all the block perks like the elemental protection, deflect arrows or shield charge, combined with the mobility and stamina regeneration of light armor, the latter also making it easier to bash with a Targe a lot. You can find it in Alftand in the boss room where you encounter the remaining members of the Unlucky Expedition. Going to the number 8, we have the Long Hammer, which is a unique two-handed weapon, much lighter and faster than any other hammer in the game. The speed and the attack rate of this weapon offsets the main weakness of any big weapon character, which is the high stamina cost of power attacks and the slow rate of attacks. Particularly annoying for two-handed hammers, and this forces the characters relying on two-handed weapons to care about their armor rating more than perhaps necessary, because they also will consume a lot of stamina on weapon bashes. All of it goes away with this weapon, while still retaining the possibility of using the sweep perk in two-handed. So every time you want to create a fast, nimble character with a two-handed weapon, this one should be considered. Also, it is the only weapon in the vanilla game somewhat resembling a quarterstaff, which brings some new possibilities for monks and pilgrims and the like, not seen since Morrowind, which is a shame. Todd, do something about this finally. It is also unenchanted, which means you can use the Elemental Fury with it, or for example the OP Chaos enchantment, and absorb health or absorb stamina. The item can be found in Lyra's Retreat, near the corpse of its previous owner. Next, number 7, the Zephyr. It is the fastest shooting bow in the game. It cannot be enchanted because even Bethesda knew it would be overpowered, but it can be used with poisoned arrows or elemental arrows if you use a mod or a creation adding them. If you also use Ordinator or Vokri to have more poison applications from a single poison, the lack of enchantments will hardly be a problem, especially if you also use the Lion's Arrow perk, which is present in both aforementioned mods, which will allow you to cast a spell on a bow. If you use the bow, you should top the fast fire rating with the quick shot perk and maybe slow time shout. The bow can also be improved with arcane blacksmith perk, and it benefits from dwarven smithing perk. This weapon is just mind-blowing for all kinds of combat archers. It makes Legolas a little bit more possible, a little bit more doable, even though the vanilla game, let's face it, isn't really geared towards this sort of acrobatic combat style. Yet, as much as it is possible in Skyrim, every Legolas-like character needs a Zephyr badly, and usually sucks without it, so it greatly improves a playstyle which is not the most played or the easiest to be powerful with, hence the spot on this list. I would place it lower if not for the aforementioned Lion's Arrow perk and all the things you can do with alchemy and the like, which so greatly offsets the lack of additional enchantments. The bow can be found in within this Dwemer ruin here, on the trunk overhanging a ravine. Moving on to number 6, we have the Wind Shear, which is the only one-handed weapon in the game having an additional effect on bashing, and a very powerful one at that. It throws people in the air on bash and staggers on strike, which makes it the sole reason why a character carrying a one-handed sword and nothing in the other hand can become insanely powerful. One of my best builds, actually, the Duelist, abuses the weapon with great success, but you can create plenty other warrior and spellsword builds with it. A spellsword would have to tediously unequip spells to get the full benefits of Wind Shear, I guess, but there are ways of dealing with the issue these days. You could also store the Whirlwind Cloak, for example, in the Okatos Recital spell from the Apocalypse mod, and thus having both a passive and an active way of flinging enemies away from you without the need of equipping any spells. You could use a combo both with light and heavy armor, both giving you a different improvement. Light armor making weapon bashing easier and heavy armor reflecting damage. You could also wear the Ebony Mail to add poison damage over time, or Azidal's armor to add a chance of paralyzing your enemies when they hit you, as well as when you bash with the Wind Shear. So Wind Shear not only makes an underwhelming playstyle better, it makes it absolutely wreck things, while also supporting any crossover build which use at least some direct combat. It definitely deserves a high place on the list. Unfortunately, you need to become a member of the Dark Brotherhood and proceed with the questline up to Hail Scythes to get this marvelous weapon. Now for number 5, with the Mage Robes. They would end up higher, but they need an entire questline to be completed. At first glance, they look like something geared towards a very specific type of a mage, but they can actually be useful and used by a great many characters. Firstly, the item combined with the Atronach Stone and the Atronach Alteration perk, and with either Mirax's gloves or his shoes, is the only way in the game to achieve 100% spell absorption. It's been pointed out 1,000 times by Fudge Muppet, I believe, and many others, that spell absorption is arguably better than magic resistance, and since every Skyrim character has to deal with magical attacks, pretty much every character in the game benefits greatly from the Atronach Stone, even if they don't need to use the absorbed magicka. And bringing the Atronach Stones 50% to 65 with these robes alone can be worth it for anyone. Secondly, even though it is a robe, so it comes with no armor rating, it has a cool defensive enchantment of a tentacle explosion. Provided you use some smithing for your boots, gauntlets, and maybe a shield, you can still end up with some decent armor rating while suffering slightly less negative consequences to your sneak effectiveness. So a spell sword, a night blade, a battle mage, an assassin and an archer can all benefit from such a cool defensive enchantment. Next, on the number 4 position, we have the Azidal's Ring of Arcana, although it's a very close call between the ring and the robes that perhaps they should switch position. However, the ring basically adds a possibility of using pretty powerful spell for low magicka characters, and as such supports so many weird and obscure builds. The item adds 2 spells, but the Ignite is the one worth an item slot by itself, because it costs peanuts in magicka, deals damage over 15 seconds and stacks with itself, which means you can cast it a few times consecutively at the same target and just wait for it to burn. This is great for a magician, a spell sword, and even sneak characters, especially when used with a mod adding sneak attack damage to spells. And the amount of ways in which you can increase the long-lasting stacking damage of the spell is frankly terrifying. I maxed it out once and I still have some PTSD. You can use fire-related destruction perks, you can combine those with Aspect of Terror as always in the vanilla game, you can use it with dual casting and impact perks, you can use a fortified destruction potion, and many of you will have at least one mod giving the ability to increase destruction spell damage through an enchantment. There is one in Summer Mist. There is also the Dragon Aspect Shout and weakness to fire, poisons, and the freaking Azidal mask, which you get in the same dungeon where the ring can be found. With the impact perk, it can also, like all the destruction ranged spells, become a crowd control tool. Ignite costs only 30 points of magicka, which is 25% less than Firebolt, while potentially dealing plenty more damage than Firebolt. To get the ring, you need to pursue the quest Unearthed and get to the final chambers of Kolbjorn Barrow. It means it is locked away for you in the early game because the quest requires both time and money. There isn't enough quests like that in Skyrim, by the way, but that's another matter. Okay, top 3, are you ready? On the honorable and venerable 3rd position, we have the Predator's Graze. This is a set of lovely little boots with 2 enchantment effects you could theoretically find elsewhere, but in practice finding muffle in random loot is not that easy, and there always is a decent chance you will play through 50 levels, hundreds of hours, and questing and exploring and like, and never actually find one, especially if you also use Summer Mist or other mods adding more enchanted items to the random loot. Even if you do find it, it will be 50% muffle. Meanwhile, these bad boys make you move completely silently, which can be terribly abused by early game sneak characters, actually all early game characters. The addition of 1 point of stamina regeneration per second is also much better than it looks at first glance, simply because you only need 1 point to perform a power attack or a power bash. Even though both of these effects can be obtained without the shoes, without high enchanting and or sneak perks, full muffle is tedious or impossible to achieve. This makes Predator's Grace a perfect item for a character type I tend to call a sneaky warrior. I don't know if that's a good nomenclature, guys, I'm just a Slav. So quite a wide array of characters can use this item or even find it necessary, especially early in the game. The item is located in Deepwood Vale near the exit of Hag's End. It's rather easy to miss it. I need a reminder pretty much every time I want to use these, so I put a guide to how to find them in the description. On 2nd position, we have the most underrated item in the game, the Visage of Mzant. It is in fact so powerful and so niche, I bet most players still don't realize how easy it is to make it powerful and useful and generally awesome to every kind of build. I made a separate video about it years ago, almost no one watched it, and it makes me cry to this day. Not simply because I am vain and desire views, but also because because it is genuinely sad that even the best Skyrim YouTubers never mention the power granted by this helmet is improved with Fortified Destruction potions. And you know, with Amplified Destruction enchantments, by the way, from Summer Mist as well. And just this little bit of information propels the visage of Mzund to one of the most powerful items in the game. The Breath of Nchuak power granted when wearing the helm is paid for in stamina and not in magicka, and stamina regenerates much faster than the two other attributes, and increasing its rate of regeneration is rather easy, barely an inconvenience. You can do it with food, you can do it with light armor perks, enchantments, potions, by being a redguard. It means even a character not investing a lot of stamina can combo the visage with literally one item of stamina regen and some food, and you are basically golden. You can spew this steam breath how often you like. Almost. Also, the power doesn't use your hands, so you can add some powerful weapons or spells on top of the breath damage. It goes very well with some area spells like flames or wall spells, since you will deal a lot of damage to everything in front of you this way. And using magicka for one, stamina for the other. Power attacks can steal the stamina pool from the breath power, so be mindful about that. It's also a very good helmet, comparable with ebony but made of metal. You can fully improve with less perks in smithing, so that's neat as well. And it increases your stamina by 60 points just to make the use of the breath power even easier. It can be found in Falbathard's Soulstyle in the final chamber. Getting it early is a little bit daunting since the dungeon is rather challenging, but with this amount of power and possible game-breaking combos, it should be a reward for a whole questline as far as I am concerned. And finally, rapapam-pam fanfare, the pretty obvious pick for the number one, the Ethereal Crown. The item is so broken, so powerful, so stupidly easy to abuse and cheese, I don't even think I need to talk about it. With the crown on your head, you can combine the Atronach stone with the Lord stone, which is already enough, but you can also make the ritual daily resurrect power completely at will, not daily at all. Combining Atronach with Apprentice is another overpowered combo. Even the Lady and the Lord giving you magic resistance, additional armor and increased regeneration of 2 attributes is more than a single item should allow for. Invisibility at will is also doable with the Shadow Stone stored in the crown, or Paralysis at will with the Serpent Stone, and you still have it with the Atronach or Lord or Lady, whatever you prefer. And don't even get me started with the Andromeda flippin' standing stones. It's uncanny, it's too much. To get the item, you need to access the Ethereum Forge, which will become available after the quest Lost to the Ages. And apparently there is an exploit to keep even more than 2 standing stone effects even after taking the crown off? Like, what? What? The item is too powerful, too useful and too flexible to be true. The only reason I don't use it like for half my builds is because even I don't want to be a power gamer all the time. That said, the item is also just so creative, unlocking so many things that are not doable without it, filling so many niche character ideas, like you may have a character who sucks at everything but can bring up an army of zombies at will. Okay, to provide you with some evidence, we've been looking at a character very hastily made, who uses some, if not all, of the items listed. He also had some fortified regeneration, stamina regeneration, and some perks in alchemy, and a few other useful perks for the weapons he used, and Lady Stone to increase the stamina regeneration even further. Okay, that is it for this video. Let me know in the comments if I forgot something terribly important. Also tell me what are, in your mind, the most underrated features in Skyrim. I mean features, items, spells, skills, and all the combinations of all of these. Most useful to the builds, most easily overlooked, and the like. For now, have fun, stay strong, we shall see each other again. Subscribe, like, and do all those YouTube things. Bye!